These are the marble run blocks I designed for a toy company that approached me, but I haven't heard from them in over 6 months, so I don't think that's going anywhere. So the only way you can get yourself a set of marble blocks like that is to build your own, and I've put together a detailed set of plans with drawings of everything. And in this video I'm going to show you how to build some of these blocks without using my fancy machines. So this marble pump is made out of a solid piece of wood, but if you don't have a slot mortiser to cut some of these slots, I'm going to show you how to build one of these made up from layers using these plans. The pump body is going to consist of 3 layers, and I'm going to use this part of the plan as a template for cutting out the middle layer. This hole needs to be an 11/16 size hole, and that's an in-between size drill. So if you have a Forstner bit set, you probably don't already have this size. You have to buy it separately, and it also needs to be inclined slightly, and to help with that I cut this wedge on the table saw. Now I have to glue the 3 layers together, but it's best to do this 2 layers at a time, because otherwise it's just too hard to keep everything aligned as the glue dries. While I'm waiting for that to dry, I'll cut out those 2 little parts. So this lever is going to go right here, and this one right here, and as you can see they don't actually fit. That's because this part here is going to get drilled out when we drill the hole in from the top. Have to be very careful everything lines up here. Sometimes you have to loosen the clamps and replace them, because the clamps often pull stuff to the side as you tighten them. With the glue fully dried, I can drill the hole from the top, and there's a notch right here from the template that tells me exactly where I need to drill that hole. I had a slight bit of bridge left in here, so I'm just going to break that part out with a chisel, because that hole is supposed to connect with the slot. So now I can place this lever and this lever inside, but before I place this one, I'm going to bevel the top edge of this one slightly, and that will encourage the marble to roll all the way to the back when it rolls in this hole here. So now let's stick all these guys in here. And my nails are far too long right now, but that makes it easy to get it back out if I need to tweak it. And got it in there, and let's try this out. Let's put a marble in here, and another one, and another one. So even without rubber bands to pull the levers back, this seems to be working right now. So now let's trim these nails so that they'll be completely inside the pump body, about here. And make sure you find where it lands. And I'm going to put the nails in from the back this time, because on the front I need to glue some other bits. This bit goes on the front, to help get the ramp at just the right position. So these little blocks are for lining it up with things that stack on top. And then the one down here is also quite important, because that one is for ensuring that the ramp that feeds into here lines up with the hole. So a problem that's likely to happen is that the marbles get stuck on here because it's not lined up well enough and the hole is not tall enough, and you could drill this hole bigger, but then you may run into other problems. So the thing to do is to just expand this hole both to the sides a little bit and especially towards the top with a carving knife. So the hole becomes a bit of a cone actually. And that way the marbles can roll freely even with some misalignment. Another tricky bit is this riser block that goes on top of here. The final exit hole comes in at a 45-degree angle, and this hole is really difficult to start like that. But if you don't have a horizontal boring machine like I did, what you can just do is you can leave a little bit of extra wood right here so you have a perpendicular surface to drill into. So let's make one of these. I want to drill down as far as the corner right here. There might be a tiny bit left in here that jams up the marble, so that needs to be cut out with a knife. Now, one thing that's important not to forget is to round all the corners, because that will make the blocks much nicer to touch. They just feel so much better. Last time I made these ramp blocks and the zigzag blocks with my router pantograph, and this time I'll show you how to make them without one. Instead of cutting these slots with a router, I'm going to drill them with a Forstner bit, and they need to be drilled at a slight incline. So to help me drill those at an angle, I'm going to use this incline block, which will allow me to drill into the block like so. So the tricky part is the edge of the drill needs to come right to this line, which is a certain distance from the bottom of the block here. Before cutting the incline in the channel on here, I need to drill the holes on the bottom, which are alignment holes when stacking on top of other blocks. And these are 16 millimeters from the end and 48 millimeters from the end. I could cut this incline with a bandsaw and then sand it, but I made a jig on the table saw for cutting it like this. So the final thing that needs to be done is to route a channel through here with a 3/4 inch ball nose bit. And that channel needs to be at a depth so that the groove is 9 millimeters from the bottom at the end of the groove. getting the depth of this groove just right is fairly critical, because if it's too deep, then the exit is too low and the one ramp won't be able to shoot into the holes of the next one. And if it's not deep enough, then especially for the first entry hole, there won't be a smooth or downward transition from the hole onto the ramp, and the marble would get stuck right here. If that's a little dangerous for you, you can always just route them straight and then cut the notches with a chisel. And they're really not that hard. The shallower ones can even be carved with a knife. Last time I cut out these zigzag blocks, I just used a pantograph to guide a straight bit to route out this groove. But without a pantograph, it'd be pretty difficult to guide a router like this unless you have a CNC machine. So without the fancy jig, I'm just going to make this out of 2 layers, and I'll take the top layer and I'll just cut this pattern out of it. With a zigzag in the top, I can now cut out the profile of it using another template of a side view. And the way to remember which way this goes on is there's this dark line here, which actually represents this tilted slanted edge right there. Now the last thing that needs to be done here is to drill the alignment holes in the bottom, and these are all 16 millimeters from the edges. I'm using an incline scrap from cutting out earlier to get this piece at the right angle to drill those holes. So that was a long video, and if you're still watching, maybe you're interested enough to head over to my website and buy a set of plans for these blocks. See the link in the description.